Airman Joseph T. O'Brien, United States Air Force, Vietnam. I interviewed Joe O'Brien in Methuen, Massachusetts, February 4th, 2009. I was there in the New England area interviewing a lot of World War II, Korean and Vietnam veterans at the time, and veterans of the Iraq War. And Joe gave me a really interesting story. I've not heard one like this. It's a combat story, but not your typical frontline combat soldier, although he got into a lot of combat. He worked with the Air Security Police, a couple of different squadrons, the 37th Security Police Squadron and the 12th Security Police Squadron. December of 1969 to December of 1970, he spent 1 year and 1 day in country. And he tells it, you can see it in his eyes. It reminds me of Doc Bartlett's interview, just the details of what he shared, what he saw. And in the interview, if you catch it, he said he was there again. He was, as he's talking to me, he stopped and said he's there. You just see it in his face and his eyes. And just an amazing first-hand account of what happened in Vietnam. He was 18, 19 years old in Vietnam and received his basic training in Amarillo, Texas, went to a duty station in Colorado Springs, Colorado, at Air Defense Command, and was involved with security police. And the North Vietnamese Army folks, they targeted these bases, and these were very dangerous places to be during Vietnam. Not a story that you hear all the time, but they were shot at, and snipers and artillery fire and the whole bit, you'll hear it. He had a hard time coming back home like a lot of Vietnam veterans, and I believe he suffers with PTSD. 72 years old today, still living in Massachusetts, and I just say God bless him for his story. I want to thank Michael and Darlene Zarofsky for making it possible for you to hear Joe's story today. Michael and Darlene, thank you again. Hope to see you soon. Thank you for your support of my work, your continued support of my work, your faithfulness, and your godsend. And thank you for your support of our troops, our military, and this country. So I say God bless you, folks. If you'd like to sponsor a story like Michael and Darlene, I would encourage you to do so. There's information in the video description. There's a link to click on. It'll take you to a page on my website. And if you click on my website, larrycapetto.com, there's a link at the top of the page called Sponsor a Veteran. You'll see those pictures of those veterans. Click on one of them, find one that you like, and please include their name in the sponsorship. If you just click on it, it clicks through. You have to put the name in there. So, folks, if you'd like to maybe just donate to this project, to my work, it'd be greatly appreciated. There's information in the comment section of all my videos. It's there. Just click on it, and I would really encourage you to do that. And thank you. That's what helps keep this whole thing going. To me, this is a ministry. You've heard me say that. It's a labor of love, and there's no commercials. Again, I saw a video yesterday on YouTube, and right at the apex of the message, commercial. So I don't do that. I'm not going to distract you from what you're hearing and listening to. So Voices of History Radio, been tuned in over 40 countries in the world. It's just a great resource, complements this YouTube channel. And I really want to get this into the hands of our young people. Folks, you got kids in your family, have them download the apps for free and have living history in the palms of their hand. Can't get any better than that. If I was a teacher, I'd be giving homework assignments with my stories. They're not getting it in the textbooks. History is best learned from those who were there. It's not there in the textbooks, folks. Okay. Thank you for watching, listening, subscribing to this channel. I greatly appreciate it. Enjoy your fall day or getting close to Thanksgiving. And I'm grateful for this station and this YouTube outreach, and there's many stories that are still in my archives. I still have hundreds and hundreds of stories. And I'm going to get ready to go back out in January and start interviewing Vietnam vets in the Phoenix area. So that's a mouthful. Thank you, folks, again. God bless you, and I'll talk to you on my next broadcast.
Force base in Texas, Northwest Texas.
And what was your MOS?
81150, I was a weapons system security.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about your training. Did you train over in the States for a while? Did you know you were going to go to Vietnam?
Oh yeah, that was talked about. I enlisted in the Air Force to get out of getting drafted, because I was 19 when I got out of high school.
Okay.
I had already had a draft notice. I signed the papers 3 months before I got out of high school. I enlisted in the Air Force and was sent down to basic training in Amarillo, Texas. I trained down there for 10 weeks, whatever it was, 8 weeks, 10 weeks. And the only weapons qualification we had was with the M16. A few incidents happened down there, but that doesn't matter. After that, I was assigned to a duty station at Colorado Springs, Colorado. It was headquarters for the Air Defense Command.
Okay.
And in there, we were pistol and rifle qualification. We had to go out in the range and pistol and rifle qualification, 38 Smith & Wesson, but we carried a 30 caliber carbine instead of an M16.
Okay.
I went from there. I was assigned to NORAD headquarters, which was up in Cheyenne Mountain, which is the underground complex that tracks everything in outer space.
Okay.
All the satellites and everything at that time. And I had security clearances for everything except for the J2 vault, which was a crypto vault. I had to escort the duty officer from the J2 vault to what we call a mush pit, where they scrambled all the stuff that they got decoded to be destroyed on a regular basis. Shortly after that, I made my second stripe. I had a sergeant that trained me, that told me, Sergeant Royce Adams, to stay with the books, get your stripes, he says, and you'll move up in rank quickly. I was the last guy he trained, because shortly after he started training me, he got orders to Vietnam. He ended up in Vietnam, and a month after he got there, he got killed. Wow. Royce Horace Adams, February 14th, 1969, he was killed. His name's on the wall. He got a Jeep flipped over. He got killed. I got my second stripe it was April 14th, what am I saying? I got my second stripe February. I got my second stripe in April 1st, and we sent a letter to him right away. He got it. I got a reply back within a couple of days, within a week and a half. And within a week later, he would get killed. Oh, May and June of that year, I was training, and I got told I was going to get orders to Vietnam, and I wasn't sure where. And when I did, I got orders to Da Nang. I had an older brother. All my brothers were older than me. I had an older brother that was over in England, had just came back from Vietnam himself, and I told him, he said, well, don't say nothing to Ma yet. Find out where you're going. And we worked out that I wasn't going to tell my mother at all that I was going. And I got my finished training out in Colorado. I was direct duty. I got orders to go temporary duty to a place called outside of San Antonio, Camp Bullis. I still don't know where it is because I'd never been to San Antonio, Texas. We trained out there. I've got a certificate there from the government that says Combat Security Police course completed. It was strictly weapons. There was some tactics involved. That was in October of '69.
Okay.
And at that point, my father had known. My father was a World War II vet. My father knew, my brothers knew, no one else in my family knew that I was going. I said, I'll be home in a couple of weeks to a month. And at that point, we had the weapons training crawling through the hills in Texas.
Okay.
And the place is not listed on a map because it was a nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare training site where they had all these things stored. And that's where we trained. They had built a simulated, reasonable, as close as possible scenario where we were training once we came off the rifle and grenade ranges and all mortar fire and all this stuff, machine gun fire training, that there was bunkers, the barbed wire, the concertina wire, the simulated claymores and stuff like that, what the fence line would look like where we would be defending in Vietnam, as real as possible. And several of us who were good with the weapons ended up, the instructors took us, said, we want you guys to play ambush teams. And Talbot, myself, this kid Sergeant Mike from Salem, Billy Williams from Salem, and a couple others, we picked, there were 6 of us. We ended up going with the instructors. They were all Vietnam vets themselves, combat vets. We took and set up what we thought would be good ambush sites, and they kind of helped us improvise with it. And we had artillery simulators and smoke grenades and stuff like that, and the trucks would be coming through the hills, and we would ambush them. This was just to get a familiarity with it and let the guys know what they were going to be going through if they were on convoys. The guys driving and the guys in the back. And there was 100 men, 2 officers, there was no rank, and that's all we did, day and night. Trained, rifles, weapons.
How long did you spend in Vietnam?
A year and a day. That was my tour.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump around a little bit in our interview here because I want to cover a lot of ground. But were you ever in a combat situation? Were you in support of? Tell me the closest you got to combat, or some. You said rocket attacks, or tell me what happened to you over there. What was the scariest time for you there?
Every day was scary, no matter where you were. We had early on. We had 2 sweeps. We were getting sniper fire from behind a mortuary, and we had a garbage dump outside the fence. We were getting sniper fire there, and that was in January. I got there in December '69. January, they grabbed us, they got the whole company, night platoon together, probably 125 men, and we did 2 sweeps of the garbage dump inside and outside the fence with the armored units in support, and we walked every 10 feet apart, I guess, all the rifle companies. Every one of us carried rifles. Standard issue for me was 350 rounds of rifle ammo, M16, that over-under with the grenade launcher, a couple of frags, a couple of 40s, and several trip flare, 40 millimeter flares, my C rations and what else, helmet, flak jacket. That was standard issue for us, for each rifleman. We pulled 2 sweeps through that dump. Even though we got sniper fire, we couldn't find anything. We went back a couple of nights later and we did it again that morning. We got sniper fire again. Again, they were shooting at the back of the mortuary, whoever it was. It wasn't in the Marines. The Marines were up there as well with us. Our dogs were up there. Then it was kind of, we get our intelligence reports at night, and came just before the Tet Offensive, which was April. We went out that night and they said it's a high threat, and a lot of us kind of edgy. We had been there, I'd been there almost 4 months. It was like 4 months to the day after all the other stuff happened. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, I was talking with a kid named Ford, and we were standing shotgun patrols, and we were supposed to be 15 feet apart or so, and at the time we were just talking, and I made comment. I said, what the heck? Something had come over our heads at about 15 feet. It was 1 a.m. And all of a sudden I looked up and I could see the flame coming out the ass end of this thing, and I said, oh. And before I could say anything, I had started to hit the ground, he hit the ground, and there was an explosion, 2 explosions behind us. Someone screamed rockets. At that point, they hit a bunker that was on the perimeter behind us. There was 2 killed in action and 1 guy was wounded. We had just turned that bunker over to the Vietnamese Air Force that morning. So they had known right then and there that they had zeroed in on that. They were 122 millimeter rockets. At 1:30 that same morning, we got a call. Every one of us carried a radio. Had a range of a couple of miles. 1:30 that morning, somebody called on the radio. They had 1099 Fan Rang. Fan Rang was down south of us. They were getting attacked. That was a code word, 1099. Meant somebody was getting hit. 1:45, someone called over our radio freak and said, "We're next." And someone called back and said, "Knock it off, asshole." 2 a.m., we get hit again with 11 rounds. 8 of them landed out in front of us. And the other ones were duds. They went up the line a little bit. I screamed in the radio, "We got incoming." I hit the ground. I kept screaming. I crawled out in front of the bunker just to make sure that nothing was behind it, coming in behind it, which we were ducking. We get hit again later that night. Come back in that morning. I got my quarter Crown Royal, sat down, poured 4 fingers, and just sipped it. And a couple of the guys in those early pictures in that scrapbook will verify, because we were all sitting there looking like we were looking down at the floor. Because I couldn't look up at anything at that point. All I wanted to do was hit the ground again. That night we went back out just after dark, back in different areas, same sectors, but different positions. And somewhere around 11 o'clock that night, we get hit again. Midnight, 1 o'clock, we get hit again. They walked them in. This time I was screaming in the radio, "They're walking them in, they're walking them in." They walked up 11 rounds up the road on us. I laid there screaming. They were saying, "Clear the net, clear the net." And they were yelling at me to get off the microphone. I was just screaming, "They're walking them in, they're walking them in." They come out, said, "It's all right, it's all right, it's all over." The air raid sirens had gone off and everything. It was too late. A couple nights later, we get hit again the next night after that. About 5 or 6 nights went by, we get hit. We get hit every night, sometimes 2 or 3 times. Finally, someone said, "Jesus, you're getting shell-shocked already." And because I called I saw the sky light up. The sky don't light up in the southwest, it lights up in the east. And needless to say, some more drinking in the mornings. We got back in at 6 o'clock, put our gear in the hooch, and someone would say, "Hey, I got a quarter Crown Royal, I got a 6-pack of beer, a cooler full of beer or something, refrigerator full of beer, quarter for a drink," and sit there. And that's what we did. And one particular night, they put me out in what they call a Bravo 11. They put me up on top of a revetment wall. And that night, the sky lit up again. I screamed it into the radio. This time, I said, "To hell with it." I just dove. I was about 15, 20 feet off the ground. I dove to the ground, hit the ground screaming, keyed the radio mic and yelling. And they kept saying, we got it, clear the net, clear the net." They finally got an armored unit to come out, and 2 of the guys from the armored unit, Ray Navarro and Bobby Seitz, I was stationed with in the States, Colorado. They come out, they saw my helmet in one way and me and my rifle. I was trying to crawl under something. I don't know what the hell I was crawling under, because I was shaking, and I was still screaming. They talked me down. They put me in the armored unit. And they said, "We'll take it for a ride." They rode around inside, just in that area for a few minutes, just to calm me down. A couple nights after that, we didn't get hit for a couple of days. And there was an EC-121 Navy plane. It was a spy plane with probably 30-man crew, had taken off or was coming in for a landing. And it suddenly veered off from landing. What happened, I don't know. I was in the hooch sleeping at the time, and it crashed. My lieutenant that night came out, said, "Get O'Brien." And I said, "Why are they messing with me for? I didn't do it. What the hell did I do?" And needless to say, they took me from where I was supposed to be, Air America, to being on their planes, down to where the plane crash was. They gave me a shotgun and an assault pack of 100-round shotgun ammo. I had my radio and my C-rats and my gear, flak jacket and all that shit. And they put me down there. And the lieutenant came over afterwards. He said, I requested you, O'Brien. They're not messing with you. He said, we had a lot of people get killed in this plane crash today. Actually, 22 people get killed in the crash. And they didn't want anybody at the crash site. He said, I requested you. So I knew at least 22 people were dead. And I didn't notice till after that there was they still couldn't get into the plane because of all the classified stuff. The Air Force, nobody could get near it. So that's why they got me to stand there. They said, if anybody comes near it, you got your orders. And he said, just shoot them. Don't worry about it. And I said, thank you, Lieutenant. And that was one of the few, we had 2 lieutenants, weapons officer and a duty officer, in that 500, in the night platoons. And they were the only 2 guys that were decent as far as officers. That happened. And later on, there was a few other incidents. I shot at some people, and they jumped all over me for it, saying they were friendly forces. And I said, you know, no one ever waved at me that I shot at. And they kind of didn't like that for an answer. But the weapons officer and the lieutenant and the 6 guys that were on that armored unit were right there when that shooting happened. They were going after a gunship that was taking off, and I shot at them, and they DD out that means take off, into the village, and they lost them. They came back and they said, we'll see if we can find them, but it was villages all around the base, so it was useless. The next morning, back in the hooch, where we lived, staging area, one of the guys came over and said, the captain or lieutenant want to see you. The weapons officer. I said, okay. So what the hell do they want? Tell them come down and see me. And they said, no, you got to go up there. And they wanted a statement of what happened. And the guys that were there, Bob Seitz, Ray Navarro, Sergeant Price, the guys from the armored unit, turned around and said, don't worry about it. We told them what we saw and it was justified, the shooting. So they didn't like that too much. Some of the higher ups in the company, sergeants of the guards especially, they had to fill out paperwork. They were lazy. I went up, I saw the captain and the lieutenant, and they talked to me and they said, well, my version of it, I told them what happened. They ran through a checkpoint, I saw them, the gunship was taken off, and it was what they call a Stinger, it was a C-119. And the crew, the commander of the gunship itself was from Dorchester. I had talked with him many times. They took off, and this motor scooter came in behind them. And it looked like they were going to throw something in the back of the plane and blow it up, so I just fired. Everything was justified. That night I went to go back out on patrol. I had a shotgun. My partner, Robbie, said, I'll give you an eyeful. When I loaded it, put it in the gun barrel, in a garbage barrel we had there full of sand. Filled this tube with the 12 gauge, flipped it, put one in the chamber, threw the safety on, walked into the ranks, and the sergeant of the guard said, you're not going anywhere, O'Brien, put that rifle away. And I said, it ain't a rifle, it's a shotgun. And he commenced to jump up one side of me and down the other, and Robbie said, don't do what I think you're gonna do. And I just turned around, I just stuck it in his face. And for the next 45 minutes, we had a standoff. And everybody in the company, 125 guys, were going out, and the guys that were coming in from the platoon were all there. Needless to say, someone yelled, get Captain Stamps. They finally got Captain Stamps. He come over. He said, don't shoot him. He ain't worth a bullet. He said, why should you go to jail for an asshole? And that's just the way it was said. And I cleared the shotgun and I put it down. And the next few minutes were, O'Brien, you're relieved of duty. You're shell-shocked. You're not going out in this company. Captain Stamps said, put it down, go back in the hooch. He says, we'll take care of this. And at that point, I just wanted to blow the son of a bitch away, because I had said to him, where were you when I was shooting at somebody? You didn't come out, you didn't say nothing. What are you doing? Drinking coffee, sitting on your ass? And I yelled at them. And they didn't like that. I was very outspoken. Authority figures I didn't like, especially the lazy ones. And after that, I spent 21 days. I couldn't carry a rifle. They got me and this kid, Meatball, Tommy DeSaro from Dorchester. We had an armored unit. We had a kid that drove. We couldn't carry a rifle. We went outside the fence in the mornings, restringing the trip wires, checking the claymores and the booby traps on the fence. And we did that for the better part of the 2 or 3 weeks that we were on the shit details. Me and Meatball ended up, at one point, we were assigned to the mortar team. We built the bunkers. I have the pictures of us building the bunkers. We were assigned there for that period of time. And there were a couple of fire missions. It was in support of the Navy on a river patrol boats just south of Da Nang. We took the initiative and built the bunkers for them to cover the ammo. And the Air Force ran that mortar site. They had 281 millimeter guns. One was on the I-Corps bridge, permanently fixed. So if we ever got attacked, they were going to blow that bridge first. The second one was a fire mission. That was our primary purpose. All these were manned by Air Force personnel, security police personnel. I come back after pulling that detail, or whatever you want to call it, and the sergeant on the armored unit requested I rode with them a few times, 6-man armored unit, and he asked me to pick one guy out of the company who I thought would be a good guy to team up with, who was familiar with all the weapons as well, machine guns and everything. I picked Robbie, Albert Robertson. He was from Port Arthur, Texas. In fact, the only reason I picked him was we ran together when we were off duty. Where the hell do we go? Walk around the hooch. There was no place to go in Vietnam. Walk up the road, the EM club, place to get something to eat, the dining hall. That was what we called running. I picked Robbie because we were always joking around. We trained in Texas together. We hit it off when we first got there. So, and I didn't care race, creed, or color, whatever. Robbie was black, I was white. We hit it off. He was as nutty as I was. Maybe I was a little nuttier, but when we were on the armored unit, we had a tryout on it. They took us out. We deployed a few times, set up different things with the machine guns, ambushes, just to see what we could do, capable of doing. And the sergeant in charge of the team liked it. So we were the next 2 new members. And Bobby Seitz left. His mother took ill. He went home. Ray Navarro took over the team, and Ray and I were stationed together. And he was leaving. They picked 2 more guys to come back on. It was Don and Paul, Don Moore and Don Meade and Paul Moore. And they were the next 2 guys. And 2 of us, we split. When Ray left, I was a team leader for a period of time. And because we only got 1 day off a month, we had to have 2 team leaders. So the 6-man armored unit, we carried M60 mounted that was a machine gun. We had a 60 in the back hatch. There was a gunner in the back. Had a fully automatic 40 millimeter cannon mounted up top. All 6 of us carried M16s. We had 6,000 rounds of machine gun ammo, anti-tank weapons, 40 millimeter grenades, which were automatics. Had the laws, frags and 40s. We were a fully functional combat response team, what they call QRT, quick reaction. Anything happened, we were the first ones rolling. When the rockets started flying, everybody buttoned up but the driver, because you couldn't really see through the gun ports. The guy up in the turret would drop down inside, close the hatch. The rockets would be landed. We'd be going towards them to make sure that nobody was coming in behind it. And then we would bail out the back hatch and the side hatches and form an ambush team right off the bat. I feel like I'm still there. And Couple more occasions we had gotten radio calls too. We had movement on the fence, and we deployed. As it turned out, we had about 5 of us had been together pretty much for about 4.5 to 5 months at that point on the armored unit. And we got a radio call, we got movement outside the fence. At that point, we took off deployed, and I had just I made sure the machine gun in the turret was locked and loaded. I said, I got a visual, give me the count of 3, hit this sucker reverse, let's get the hell out of here. I'll lay cover fire. Robbie and the other 3 guys had already deployed out the back, and they rolled off to my right. I said, Robbie, I got you on 3. Let's get the hell out of here. Back up. I said, if I lay the fire, I'll cover you. The split second, I said 3. I heard someone yell, hey guys. I had a visual with something shiny. I took a bead on that with the machine gun. That's when I heard the voice come out of the darkness. It's probably 2 o'clock in the morning. It was my sergeant, one of the sergeants in the company, and a brand new second lieutenant that was going to be our duty officer. I yelled to Robbie, get back up here. Robbie popped up his hat through the hatch. What's up? Cleared the M60. The belt of ammo fell down outside. I caught it, and the lieutenant said, what are you doing that for? And I said, my name is O'Brien, Joseph T., and I gave him my serial number, and I said, now I want to know something about you. I said, get rid of the gold bars, get rid of whatever book you're carrying that's telling you how to do things. I said, because you're in Vietnam, and I said, I'm not going home to my mother in a blankety-blank body bag. I said, but if you keep them gold bars on, you're going home to yours in one, and it might be from one of us. And at that point, Sergeant Toma was the tech sergeant in charge. He said, Lieutenant, I think Mr. O'Brien spoke enough, let's leave. I want your rank. And he started to yell at me. And the lieutenant finally turned around. I said, Lieutenant, that round in the first round of the chamber was going to the side of your head. I said, what was shiny? I said, now get rid of your gold bars and get the hell out of here. And at that point, Robbie was starting to laugh. And he said, damn. He says, I would have liked seeing you shoot somebody. I said, I wouldn't. And it was dumb, stupid, because I yelled at the lieutenant. And I said, I got 11 months in this country and no one's sending me home in a body bag. None of us. And that's when Sergeant Tuma grabbed him and took him away. I don't think I ever saw that lieutenant again, because I don't think he was assigned to our company as a duty officer or whatever he was.
Let's jump ahead a little bit for time's sake. You're really giving me some detail. You made a comment about it. You feel like you're still there. It seems pretty real to you. Tell me about your last day in Vietnam and what that meant to you. Were you glad to get out of there, and then coming back home?
Last day in Vietnam. Well, actually, I had 3 days left when I got done. My last night, I pulled a gun jeep, and they put me on a gun jeep, and that night, the north end of the perimeter got overrun in the village, from the village. They sent me up there with a box of a gun jeep and cover the Marines and the dog handlers. Our dogs were on alert, and I had flares and ammo. And I just yelled, I got 3 days left in country. The morning, and they told me to get up there, and I did, and I was shaking. Last day in country, Robbie, Don, Paul, Chester, myself, there was 5 of us on the armored unit. They took me off the month before. Just within about 2 weeks after that lieutenant incident, I was off the armored unit because they had to train someone else. Last day before we left, I don't think I slept. Walked around, December 70, it was 120 degrees that morning. It was about 9 o'clock. Bus picked us up. There was a bunch of us rotating back. We get on the bus, say goodbye to some of the guys that were staying. So we'll keep in touch. Got over to the air terminal. I saw some of the guys I knew that were from another company, some of the Marines that I had known, I pulled duty with. The caskets and the body bags the caskets were already there. They were loading on the plane first. We get in the plane, and it was a charter flight, Satin Airways. Going back, we landed in Japan. Right after we took off, shortly afterwards, we were flying to Japan, and we had some mechanical difficulty. They lost the pressurization or something in the cabin. There was no air circulating in the plane. Then they only had little box lunches. We had no meals. I didn't know how we were eating anyways. We got box lunches and cold sandwiches and stuff like that on the plane. And this is about an 18-hour flight, I think. Got to Japan, it was 58 degrees. They opened the door and I was froze. I had just left 120 degrees. And we got out, and a bunch of us ran right into the Class 6 door. One of the guys was in the Army I knew, grabbed a bottle of scotch. He says, "Here, I'm paying for this." You know, we just started busting it. We were froze. Had that bottle of scotch and some water, belted that down a couple of times. We stayed there for maybe 2 or 3 hours. Took off. We still having difficulty. There was no air circulating. Everybody, there was 300 people on the plane, I think. There was a bunch of us from the security company, Army, Marines, some nurses. When we got halfway back, we were supposed to land in Alaska. They said we were diverted to Alaska to Seattle. And some of the officers started questioning, why are we going to Seattle? We were supposed to land in Fairbanks or something, or Elmendorf, wherever the hell it was. And some of the officers questioned it. We landed, we got up to Seattle, Tacoma, and we started flying into Seattle. By that time, I think I was in a pretty good state of shock at that time. Because I was shaking, I was shivering. Flew into Seattle. You could see the top of Mount Rainier, but you couldn't see nothing else. It was just like, it was cloud block. The pilot came on, he says, "Down there is Seattle, Tacoma. We're gonna land there somehow. Hold on." I said, what is he, out of his mind? And we finally landed. We pulled into the military side to land, to fuel up, because we were low on fuel. And they turned around and said, "You have to debark the plane." Everybody had to get off before they would fuel us up. And the pilot said, "No." We taxied over to the civilian terminal in Tacoma, Seattle, well, SeaTac was what they called it, but it was civilian side. They fueled us up, and where I was sitting on the wing tip, on the wing side, I saw him hook the fuel line up to the wing. My father had worked for American Airlines for many years at the point. And I saw the fuel line hooked up, and all of a sudden I see fuel pouring down the thing. And I said, "Hey, there's fuel leaking out of that hose," and they're pumping out of the truck. And someone says, "We don't have a static cord on this either to ground us." And needless to say, I took some pictures. I should have bought them. I got them sitting in the kitchen of a crash crew pulling up and foaming down the side of the plane. And it was the 300 and something of us sitting on it. All I could think of was us being crispy critted, burnt alive. And I'm saying all this, and I come back to the States to get this. We finally took off from Seattle. They foamed the plane down. We took off from Seattle. We landed in out in San Bernardino in the desert. We all got off, shook hands, hugged each other, said our goodbyes. Some of the guys said, "Don't call us, we won't call you." I said, "Don't worry, I'm not calling anybody." I kissed the ground when we got to San Bernardino. Then we rode into the airport in LA, probably 60, 70 miles, with a bunch of us, the same 5 guys. We all piled into a cab. got back to to L.A., went our merry ways, separate ways. I went into a restaurant to get something to eat, ran into a kid from Falmouth that was over there at the same time. He was in the Marines. I talked with him for a while, and the guy said, "What do you want for a meal?" I said, "Beans and hot dogs." And I ate a couple plates of beans and hot dogs, and they said, "It's on us." Sat there. We took off from L.A. at like 11 o'clock at night. We missed one flight. We took off at 11 o'clock. Coming back into Chicago, we were supposed to go to Cleveland, then to Boston. Well, we couldn't land in Cleveland because it was December and it was always lake effect snow or something. We landed in Chicago, 6 a.m. that morning, tried to land at Cleveland, back to Chicago. 6 a.m., 7 a.m., we were back in Chicago, walking around the airport. I was looking for a place to get a drink. This guy that was in the Marines, was up in the aviation battalion at Monkey Mountain, which is just east of us. We were talking, and he said, "Gee, we used to watch you guys get hit quite often." And at that point, somebody wanted to get in my face, and a kid come walking up. "Hey, are you a hero?" I wouldn't say it. He described it differently, but he said, "Hey, are you a hero?" And I said, "No, my friends are heroes, and they're not with us." Something like that. He said, "You sure you're not a hero?" And about the time he started getting in my face, he wasn't paying attention. I had taken a steel-tipped pen out of the inside of my shirt, and the guy that was with me, I forgot what his name was, he said, "Don't do what I think you're gonna do." And I had the steel-tipped pen in my hand, and as he started getting a little closer, I just rotated it around on my fingers. I was gonna jab him in the face with it, or jab him in the ear with it, because I could take someone out quite quickly and quite easily with a steel-tipped pen. I still carry a couple of them. I said, "Don't get in my face, man. Just go about your business. All I want to do is find a place and get a drink and sit down." At that point, he was convinced to disappear very quickly. And we got back. I went and sent a teletype to American Airlines at Logan Airport, who operations in Chicago, to the teletype operator in Logan Airport where my dad worked, operations. And I told the woman, Maggie, "Muzzy's son's coming home from Vietnam. Don't tell Muzzy," my dad's nickname. And at that point, they get the teletype back, message received, welcome home. I still have that from the teletype. We walked around some more, got a couple of beers, got back on the flight. By the time we finally landed in Cleveland, it was 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I had gone through a state of, I had the shakes, I was shivering, I was puking my guts out. I was a mess. I don't know what it was from. All the stuff in Vietnam, it rotated through my head a couple of hundred times. They had an ambulance waiting on the runway to take me off the plane. And the kid from Falmouth had said, "He's not going anywhere, he's going to Boston." And I was frozen. They had me wrapped in blankets and everything, and I was still shivering, shaking, sweating like no tomorrow. They finally landed in Boston, and we got off the plane. I walked into operations. At that time, you could walk outside the plane off the runway. And when I got there, my father was out fueling another aircraft. And I got out, and I walked over to operations. I said, "I want to see flight operations." I grabbed one of the stripers, one of the captain or somebody, and they took me right into operations. I said, "I'm Freddie O'Brien's nephew. My uncle was a chief of flight engineers for American. My father worked there." I says, "I'm Muzzy's son. I'm home from Vietnam." They brought me right into operations. They took my bags. They got my bags for me. I stood off to the side, and the woman in charge there, she says, "We've been waiting for you. We got your teletype." And she handed me her copy. I stood off to the side where no one would see me. My father walked in. One of the guys said, "Hey, Muzzy, where's your son? Is he home yet?" And I turned around and I walked up and I said, "Hi, Dad." And he started crying. And at that point, those hugs, crying. He said, your mother's worried sick. Because I was the second one of my family. My older brother was there for 19 months before me. And he said, your mother's worried sick. She didn't know when you were coming home. So he started crying. And as he was, the guy said, gee, Muzzy, you look. He said, you say one damn word about this to anybody, I'll kill all of you. The crying, because he was 6'1", he was 200 pounds, he was good size. Needless to say, we got out of the airport. They said, Muzzy, go home. You're all done for the night. We'll take your car. We'll take your planes. Get out to the hangar. Got in the car. It was 7 above zero. I had gone from 120 to 7 above zero. I'm wearing summer combat uniform, and I'm froze. And we got out on Route 1. I think we stopped at Cappy's, and I grabbed a nip or something just to warm up. That didn't help. And when I got home, my father unlocked the door and walked in the kitchen and kissed my mother. He said, I got something for you. My mother turned around and saw me standing there, and she's crying. That's all I could do. Hugged her, held her, and she said, I knew you'd be home. And needless to say, I broke down. Emotionally, mentally, physically, I was a wreck. And after that, some of the guys that I grew up with called the house, hey, Joe's home, come on out. And they were all in the Army, the Marine Corps, Special Forces. They razzed the living hell out of me. Hey, they would just tease the living. I won't say I haven't talked to some of them in 38 years either. I've seen them and just hi, and that's it. Don't even bother with them. And they harassed me, they teased me, they started grabbing at me and stuff. And they said, oh, I thought you were a hero. You got battle stars on your uniform. I said, yeah, so what? And I just isolated from that point on. I didn't go out of the house. I had a couple of quarts of Crown Royal. I sat in the living room. I looked out the front window. I could look out the back of the house, the front of the house. I could see anybody coming up the street, and I would sit there. It'd be 3 a.m., 4 a.m. I was still on Vietnam time. It was 13 hours difference from us. And I sat there, and after 3 days, my father said, I don't want you drinking yourself to death. I said, I'm just having a couple of drinks. And needless to say, he went down to the city hall. He talked to every one of the politicians in the city of Lawrence. And he grabbed Dickie Remen. He says, you owe me. I helped get you in office. And he was the director of Parks and Property. And my dad turned around and said, you owe me. My son just come home from Vietnam, and I don't want him drinking himself to death, sitting in a house, shaking. And needless to say, Dickie gave me 30 days on the city. And it was still 7 above zero, 10 above zero, and I was flooding parks and play steps for that 45 days I was home. And I hooked up with, one of the guys I hooked up with was a guy I knew before I went in the service I used to work with. And he was the foreman. And we were out there shoveling snow and clearing all the steps of the schools and stuff like that. And flooding the parks at night. And believe me, I was froze. I was dying 1,000 deaths. And all that time, my family, they were just glad I was home. And some of my relatives were planning a party. And at that point, I was still isolated. My older brothers, one of my older brothers and I used to go out and have a couple of beers and ride around just to get away from everybody. He'd say, it's all right if you cry. He said, there's nothing wrong with crying. And I would just sit there and break down and cry. And I didn't know what for. I was just emotional. And somewhere along the line, I started having the nightmares and the reruns of Vietnam in my head. I'd be laying in bed sleeping. Suddenly I'd hit the floor, lay there screaming like I was talking to Robbie or talking to someone on the armored units or one of the gunners or something. And then scream and sit back, get back into bed. My mother and father would be there. And Freddie would say, my brother Fred would say, he's in Vietnam. Don't wake him up. And I'd go back to bed and they'd say, who's Robbie? In the morning, my brother and I, real tight. He'd say, who's Robbie? I thought I was a kid in the Armored Unit. We were partners, running partners, before the Armored Unit, and then we were on the Armored Unit. He said, do you know you were talking to him last night? I said, no. And it was just, I'd hear sounds and I'd be ducking. I wouldn't get near fireworks. I couldn't go in crowds. I stayed away from people. If I went to go to a nightclub, ask someone to dance, people always seem to want to get in confrontations in my face. We used to go to a place and throwing DKs. And I'd just go there and I'd end up pouring myself a couple of drinks and just standing there in a corner, my back against the wall. And I'd see other guys who were in Vietnam that I'd known just talking. And that's all we do, just stand there, kind of stay away from everybody. And for the longest time, I couldn't function around other people. I'd do things and that was it. I'd go home. I wouldn't stay out. Wasn't good for dating, stuff like that. It seemed like I couldn't say the right things. And I just isolated. As one of Billy used to say, I stayed in my bunker. He'd get down in the cellar. I'd just sit in the living room, middle of the night, and look out the windows. The phone rang, I'd jump 3 feet. If I heard a car backfire, I'd be on the ground. Not damn if I had an air horn or a town horn to call firefighters. That damn thing would go off, I'd kiss the ground, and I'd be waiting for the shell fire. I'd be around people, and I'd always be looking. They'd say, what the hell are you so jumpy for? I went to my next duty station up in a missile site up in northwestern Maine. I met one of the sergeants that was in that company, and he said I was crazy. I shot at friendly people. I said, Monday, I never shot at anybody that waved to me, only people that just kept going. And needless to say, everybody up there after that 45 days home thought I was crazy. I said, no, I'm not crazy. I'm left-handed. I'm in my right mind. And I'll tell you, people didn't want to be around me. And I was carrying a sidearm. Most of the time I was a security police up there on a missile site. Carried a rifle and a sidearm as a sergeant. Needless to say, when I got out, I got a couple of times I got a gun stuck in my face while on duty because we were the arresting officers for the missile site as well. There was disturbance. Some people had problems in the housing area. And more than a few occasions, we had to go down there and find out what was going on because we were the only cops on duty. And I got a gun stuck in my face. And finally, the drinking took over. And with a couple months left, I said, I've had enough. I want to get out. And I had a senior chief master sergeant. He had every stripe and then some. Talked me into taking the staff sergeant's exam. He said, lay off the booze for a month. Study this test, study all this stuff, make E5. He said, you'll piss them off even more. That would have been E5 under 4. I had 2 years on my sergeant stripes, and I had about 3.5 months left up there, my 4 years. I got my good conduct medal, and I took the test, and I missed by like 0.003 of a point. And the chief said, there's something you missed. And I couldn't think of what the hell I missed in the test. But I would have got it. It didn't get it the first time, April. I would have got it in September, or right shortly before that, the next go. I decided to get out. I would have been E5 under 4, which was tough to do. And I just said, let me get the hell out. I'm out of here. And about 5 weeks later, they discharged me. I came back and I just picked up with the drinking and isolating, looking for work, couldn't find it. Every time I went to look for a job, they'd say, you a veteran? Yep. In the bucket, the application went. And I used to say, wait a minute, I didn't put an emergency number, who to contact in case of emergency. And they'd say, that's all right, we're not gonna hire you anyways. I mean, I got that thrown in my face so often. I even had a job as a firefighter in the city of Lawrence. We got that because we were veterans. And we went to the fire academy, we trained, we passed everything, took the written test, passed everything. And needless to say, at that point, affirmative action came along, and we get to do it. It was statewide, so it wasn't just us. Statewide, they ruled affirmative action. They had to hire minorities. I never get back on.
I'm gonna have to stop you. We're out of time, but
Yeah.
your story has blown me away. I mean, it's amazing what you shared. I've got a lot of good things there. I could keep going, but I think
No.
that's all for now. But listen, I want to thank you for your service to our country. It means a lot to me that you went to Vietnam and you served our country. And did I tell you about the high school presentation tomorrow?
No.
I would like to invite you to Methuen High School tomorrow morning.